Ladies of Reddit, what's something a guy has done, intentional or not, that instantly made you think, wow, he's different in a good way? He broke up with me because he was moving out of state for a job and I just wasn't going to be able to follow him. He brought me flowers, snacks, dinner, cards, and I don't remember what else to soften the blow. When he came back to visit, I was struggling hard, as in I could barely afford to feed myself. When he stopped by to see me, he had arms full of groceries to stock my fridge and pantry for weeks. He also kept trying to give me cash, but I refused. After he left, I found money stuck under something on my counter, can't remember what. He died a few years later in a car accident. Chris, you were one of a kind. I'll never miss the opportunity to tell the world what a uniquely amazing human you were. When my husband was my boyfriend, I noticed that he always acknowledged everyone in the room. For instance, whenever we were in a room with my entire family, he would approach absolutely everyone, my dad, mom, sister, cousins, uncles, aunts, friends, and be able to establish a conversation and a relationship with them eventually. Even my relative's dog knew him to be the only one that could set aside some time just to pet him. At first, I thought that my boyfriend is just a social being, which I was appreciative of seeing as how I personally have been always a socially inept, awkward individual. But eventually this gift of his reaped dividends too, as when a close cousin of mine, let's say, fell in with the bad sort of crowd and was in desperate need of help and support, the only person she felt comfortable reaching out to was my boyfriend, who was then able to pass word to the rest of the family, and also rescue her. Had been dating my, now, husband for about a month, maybe two. One evening I was at home and he unexpectedly showed up at the door and asked me to come out to his car. He just showed me a piece of wood he'd bought. Turns out he bought it from near my house, and as he was passing, he figured he'd stop by and show me. Literally showed me his wood and left. I knew then that he wasn't trying to play games or act in a certain way like other people I dated. That piece of wood is now our coffee table. One of our first dates, a teen waitress spilled a whole glass of water on him when it was super busy and she was rushing about. She started apologizing with tears almost running down her face, and he took the time to console her, not even worrying about his clothes. He gave her a moment to breathe without the other customers by pretending to look busy with her before she went on her way feeling better. I've seen too many wait staff get treated poorly, but watching him take care of her leads me to believe he's going to be an amazing father one day. I once dropped a steaming hot fresh pizza on a guy because I was rushing and I tripped, and it burned his arm and stained his clothes, and he was so nice to me, and when my manager came over, he apologized to my manager and said it wasn't my fault and that he was cool waiting for a new pizza and still paying for it. We didn't charge him for anything, and while I didn't fall in love with him or anything, the kindness he showed me when I literally burned him is something I'll never forget. In high school, one of my guy friends who liked me baked me a big plate of chocolate chip cookies and randomly gave it to me one day. I finished the whole plate during one class, and he was impressed and also a bit horrified. I thought it was super cute and unusual for a dude to bake someone cookies. He and I have been together going on 16 years, married for almost 7. How he baked me cookies is one thing I'll never forget. I'm a type 1 diabetic and I wear a pump, which is basically a machine that helps track my blood sugar and give me insulin accordingly. When my blood sugar gets too low or too high, the pump makes noises. A low tone for low bullshit and a high tone for high bullshit. My so figured those tones out. One night I was sitting on the couch scrolling and my pump signaled I had low blood sugar. He was in the kitchen and without a word being said went to the fridge and brought me a juice box. I didn't know he knew, and it felt really good to feel understood and that someone was actually taking the time to know me and my disability. We had only been dating for 2 to 3 months at this point. I'm a type 1 diabetic too. 3 to 4 months into dating my now wife, she comes to me one day saying she'd done research into the CGM I use and said, if I ever wanted to, she would like to install the app that lets her see my levels via my phone. She said she knew I could look after myself, but she liked the idea of someone else one day also being able to help. Fuck me, fell in love so quickly. 1-year anniversary coming up. My husband genuinely listens when I talk about hobbies he doesn't share, and remembers what I said about them. It makes me really happy. Listening really is a secret superpower. At some point in my early 20s, the aha moment came to me, and I realized that listening was one of the most important skills you can develop. And not just listening, but intently, honestly, with care and concern. And man, what a difference it makes in relationships. Another bonus for developing good listening skills is that it's seemingly so rare among guys that even if you're not the best at it, you stand out among a sea of people. We went to pick up our puppy, and while I was getting Pup settled in the back of the car, I look back and see my guy bent down and thanking the mama dog, promising her we would take care of her baby. Been married over 15 years now. When I started dating my guy, he knows how obsessed I am with rocks and beach combing. We live on the beach, and I'll go look for shells for hours, and he never complains. The first road trip we took together, he took me to the biggest natural rock formation on the west coast, Morro Bay. I'm a grown-ass adult, and he never made me feel stupid for my love of rocks and collecting, and when we got there he said, "I know how much you love rocks, so I brought you to the biggest one I could. You just can't take this one home, unfortunately." Something along the lines of that. I start crying immediately because I was always made fun of by my previous relationships for it. My wife is a geologist and geophysicist. I constantly tell people, you know that phase that every kid goes through, where at the end of the day, their pockets are full of all the cool rocks they found. Yeah, she never outgrew that. I love her to pieces, and her obsession with rocks is wonderful. Makes birthday gifts way more affordable. She wants rocks, not gemstones. I went out with this guy I was newly dating, plus 3 other friends one time. We went to the food court to eat, and all of 5 of us had different food choices, so we went on our own to order. Unfortunately, my food took longer to make, and eventually I saw the 4 of them, including the guy I was dating, back on the table with all their food. Finally, when I got my food, I went to our table to see the 3 of my friends digging on their plates while his was untouched. I asked, "Is something wrong with your food? Why haven't you touched it?" He said, "I was waiting for you." I swear, I never forgot that moment. I'm now married to him. Let me just add that my food took about 5 minutes longer than theirs. I was already expecting them to be eating ahead, and I didn't, nor expected him or the group to be waiting for me. It was the gesture of him waiting for me while everyone else was eating that made me feel that this guy's a keeper. Waiting to eat my food if someone's food hasn't arrived yet is one of the best things my parents taught me. When we were young, dating and still living with our respective parents, my car motor blew and I didn't have rides to work. He would drop his car off to me after he got out of work in the middle of the night, while I was asleep, and walk home, so I had a way to work in the morning. That's amazing. LOL. Where are you guys now? We're married. We're only 25, but we've been together since we were 12 in 7th grade. My best friend. I had a difficult childhood, and at one point survived on cans of Spam and sardines. I offhandedly mentioned to him how I always keep at least a can of each in my pantry at all times, because it gives me a sense of peace and safety to know there is something to eat. We weren't even dating at the time. I visited on the weekends to help with his garden. But the next time I visited, he showed me the several cans of Spam and sardines he bought in the pantry. He told me he wanted me to always feel safe with him and his home, and he will never let either of those items run out. Been together for a little over 3 years now. It was my second night staying over at his place. He could tell that I didn't sleep well the first time, so when he asked why, I told him that I always have trouble falling and staying asleep, and that I usually do things like take melatonin gummies to help. So when I went over there to spend the night a second time, he had bought an Android charger, he had iPhone, for me to use, melatonin gummies, and this lavender-scented massage oil, because lavender is supposed to help calm you down, that he used to give me this glorious back massage before we went to sleep. I still didn't sleep well, but the effort won me over. LOL. He ended up being a major douchebag in the end, but this was still one of the kindest gestures I've ever been shown, so I try not to let his douchebaggery taint the memory for me. Broke into my house to prepare a casserole and leave a note with cooking instructions. I was a busy single mother, and we'd been dating long enough that this wasn't creepy. On our 3rd date, he walks me to my car but then stops and says, "Wait, I have a present for you." Pulls out a bag and in it are Stella ciders. I had told him in passing a couple weeks prior that they were my fave drink and I hadn't seen them anywhere since college. I was completely floored. Dating now for 3 months and hopefully this is it. I was snipping the plastic ring thingy, that a 6-pack of drinks comes in. I know it's probably a fruitless gesture, but turtles. I just do it on autopilot at this point. He asked me what I was doing. He'd never heard this before, so I explained. A couple weeks later, I walked into the kitchen unexpectedly and totally startled him while he was snipping up a plastic thingy. Melted. I cut those up also. I remember something about animals getting them stuck around their necks. So now when I cut them up, I think raccoon when I do the big ones, squirrels with the medium ones, and mice with the tiny ones. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.